The room fell silent the moment Elena Whitford realized she'd been replaced. Not quietly, not privately, but in front of 300 people who'd come to watch her former fiancé marry someone else, someone richer, more useful, more acceptable. In a world where your last name determined whether you ate at the table or starved outside it, Elena had just become irrelevant, and everyone knew it. But then a man walked in, dangerous, foreign, feared, and he looked straight at her. What happens when the woman society throws away becomes the one thing a ruthless duke can't ignore? Stay with me until the end, like, comment, and tell me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The Ashford Grand Ballroom smelled like imported roses and barely concealed cruelty. Elena stood near the back corner, half hidden behind a marble column, watching the glittering chaos unfold in front of her. Chandeliers dripped light across polished floors. Women in gowns worth more than most people earned in a year floated past, their laughter sharp and deliberate. Men in tailored suits made deals with handshakes that would ruin lives by morning. And at the center of it all, beneath an archway wrapped in white silk and gold ribbon, stood him, Marcus Holloway, her former fiancé. Elena's chest tightened, but she refused to look away. She'd trained herself not to flinch, not to cry, not to give them the satisfaction. Marcus looked perfect, of course. He always did. Tall, clean-cut, with that easy smile that made people trust him even when they shouldn't. His dark hair was slicked back, his suit immaculate. He stood with his hand resting lightly on the waist of his bride-to-be, Catherine Langford, daughter of the Langford shipping empire, a woman whose family could buy and sell entire towns without blinking. Catherine was beautiful in the way only old money could afford. Blonde, poised, draped in a gown that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. She tilted her head toward Marcus and whispered something that made him laugh. Elena felt the knife twist deeper. 3 months ago, that had been her. 3 months ago, Marcus had looked at her the same way, promised her the same future, whispered the same sweet lies about partnership and forever. Then her father's business collapsed, and Marcus Holloway, ever the pragmatist, had moved on to someone whose father's business hadn't collapsed. Simple as that. "Still here, I see." The voice slithered up beside her, low and amused. Elena didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Vivian Cross, society columnist, professional gossip, and one of the most venomous women in the city. Elena kept her gaze forward. "Last I checked, it's a public event." "Oh, technically, yes." Vivian stepped closer, her perfume cloying and too sweet. "But most people with any sense of dignity would have stayed home. Watching your ex-fiancé marry someone better? That's..." She paused, savoring the word. Brave. Or pathetic. Hard to tell. Elena's jaw tightened. "I'm fine, Vivian." "Are you?" Vivian's smile widened. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who just realized she bet everything on the wrong horse." Elena finally turned to face her. Vivian was dressed in crimson silk, her dark hair pinned up in an elaborate twist, her eyes gleaming with the kind of hunger that came from feeding on other people's misery. "What do you want?" Elena asked flatly. "Just checking in." Vivian's tone was sticky with false sympathy. "You know how people talk. They're saying Marcus made the smart choice, that you were, well, fine when your family had money, but now?" She shrugged delicately. "Let's just say you're not exactly a hot commodity anymore." Elena forced herself to breathe slowly. In, out. Don't react. Don't give her anything. "Thanks for the update," she said coolly. "I'll be sure to adjust my expectations." Vivian laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Oh, sweetie, your expectations were the problem. You actually thought Marcus Holloway would marry someone whose father declared bankruptcy? In this world?" She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You were never going to be enough." Elena felt the words land like a punch, but she kept her face smooth. Vivian wanted a reaction, wanted tears, anger, something to write about in tomorrow's column. She wouldn't get it. "If you'll excuse me," Elena said quietly, turning back toward the ceremony. Vivian laughed again, already moving away. "Enjoy the show, darling. I know I will." Elena stood frozen as Vivian disappeared into the crowd, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. You were never going to be enough. The worst part? She wasn't wrong. Tamsek. The ceremony started exactly on time. The room shifted, conversations dropping to murmurs as the officiant stepped forward. Marcus took his place at the altar, his expression composed, confident. Catherine glided down the aisle on her father's arm, every step perfectly measured, every smile rehearsed. Elena watched from the shadows and felt like she was disappearing. She'd known this was coming, had known for weeks, but knowing didn't make it easier, didn't stop the hollow ache spreading through her chest, the humiliation burning just beneath her skin. She should have stayed home, but some twisted part of her had needed to see it, needed to witness the exact moment her old life officially ended. The officiant's voice droned on, something about love, commitment, partnership, words that had once meant something, words that now felt like lies. Elena's fingers curled into fists at her sides. Don't cry. Don't you dare cry. Do you, Marcus Holloway, take Catherine Langford to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. The words were confident, final. Elena's stomach turned. And do you, Catherine Langford, take Marcus Holloway to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Applause erupted, polite and restrained, the sound of people who clapped because it was expected, not because they cared. Elena felt the world tilt slightly. It was done. Marcus kissed his new bride and the crowd murmured approval. Cameras flashed. Someone popped a bottle of champagne in the corner. And Elena stood there, invisible, watching the man who'd promised her everything give it all to someone else. She should have left. Should have slipped out the side door, gone home, locked herself in her apartment, and let herself fall apart in private. But her legs wouldn't move, so she stayed. The reception spilled into the adjoining hall, a sprawling space filled with round tables draped in white linen, towering centerpieces of lilies and orchids, and enough champagne to drown a small army. Elena drifted toward the bar, keeping to the edges of the room. People moved around her like water around a stone, present but irrelevant. She ordered a glass of wine and tried to look like she belonged. Rough night? The voice came from her left, low, smooth, faintly accented. Elena glanced over. The man standing beside her was tall, dark-haired, and dressed in a suit that fit him like it had been built specifically for his frame. His features were sharp, almost severe, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes so dark they were nearly black. He looked out of place in the same way a wolf might look out of place in a room full of house cats. Dangerous. Elena's first instinct was to look away. Her second was to ignore him entirely. But something about the way he watched her, steady, unblinking, like he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls, made her pause. I'm fine, she said automatically. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're lying. Elena blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. He turned fully toward her now, leaning one elbow against the bar. You're standing in the corner of your ex-fiancé's wedding reception, pretending you're fine, when you very clearly are not. Heat flooded her cheeks. You don't know anything about me. True. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. But I know what someone looks like when they've been thrown to the wolves. Elena stiffened. I don't need your pity. Good. His voice was calm, almost amused. I wasn't offering any. She stared at him, caught off guard. Most people either pitied her or mocked her. This man did neither. Then what do you want? She asked. He considered the question for a moment, his gaze never leaving hers. I'm not sure yet. Elena felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something unsettling about him, something predatory and patient, like he was used to getting exactly what he wanted, exactly when he wanted it. Who are you? She asked. Darian Varelli. The name landed like a stone. Elena's breath caught. Everyone knew that name. Everyone. Darian Varelli, foreign duke, ruthless businessman, the kind of man people whispered about in boardrooms and ballrooms alike. He'd built an empire in industries most people didn't even know existed. Shipping, imports, real estate, weapons manufacturing. Rumor had it he'd started with nothing and clawed his way to the top through sheer will and a complete lack of mercy. He was feared, respected, avoided, and he was standing next to her at a wedding reception, looking at her like she was the most interesting thing in the room. Elena swallowed hard. Why are you talking to me? Because you're the only person here who isn't pretending. She frowned. Pretending what? That any of this matters. He gestured vaguely toward the crowd, the laughter, the champagne, the carefully curated smiles. They're all playing a game. You're the only one who looks like you've stopped caring about the rules. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Darian studied her for another long moment, then straightened. Would you like to dance? Elena almost laughed. What? Dance. He said it like it was the most reasonable suggestion in the world. With me. Why would I do that? Because, he said quietly, everyone in this room is watching you, waiting to see if you'll break, if you'll run, if you'll cry. His eyes locked onto hers. And I think you'd rather give them something else to talk about. Elena's heart pounded. He was right. She could feel the eyes on her. Vivian Cross, Marcus's new in-laws, half the people in this room. They were watching, waiting for her to crumble. Darian extended his hand. So, what do you say? Elena looked at his hand, then at his face. Dangerous, ruthless, feared, and offering her exactly what she needed most, a way to stop being invisible. She took his hand. Mag. The moment they stepped onto the dance floor, the room shifted. Conversations faltered, heads turned, whispers rippled outward like waves. Darian's hand settled on her waist, firm and steady, and Elena forced herself not to tremble. Up close, he was even more imposing, taller, broader, radiating a quiet, controlled power that made her feel both safe and terrified at the same time. Relax, he murmured. I am relaxed. You're holding your breath. She exhaled sharply, and his mouth twitched. They moved in sync, his lead smooth and effortless. Elena had danced 1,000 times before, at cotillions, charity galas, society functions where dancing was just another performance. But this felt different. This felt like stepping into a spotlight she hadn't asked for, but couldn't escape. They're staring, she whispered. Good. Good? Let them stare. Darian's voice was low, calm. Let them wonder why someone like me is interested in someone like you. Elena's pulse quickened. And why are you interested? Because, he said simply, you're the only person in this room who isn't afraid of me. That wasn't true. She was afraid of him. Terrified, actually, but not in the way other people were. She was afraid of what he represented, of what it might mean to be seen by someone like him. You don't know me, she said quietly. Not yet. The words sent a chill through her. The song ended and Darian stepped back, his hand slipping away from her waist. But he didn't leave. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at her, and said, I'm hosting a dinner tomorrow night. Private. Exclusive. I'd like you to come. Elena blinked. Why? Because I think you're tired of being invisible. Her throat tightened. And because, he continued, his voice dropping lower, I think you're ready to stop letting people like him. He glanced briefly toward Marcus, who was watching them with a frown. Decide what you're worth. Elena's hands trembled. Darian pulled a card from his jacket pocket and pressed it into her palm. Think about it. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the dance floor, breathless and shaking. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Elena barely remembered leaving the reception, barely remembered the cab ride home, barely remembered unlocking the door to her cramped apartment and collapsing onto the couch. All she could think about was the weight of Darian Varelli's gaze, the steadiness of his hand, the quiet certainty in his voice when he'd said, I think you're ready to stop letting people decide what you're worth. She looked down at the card he'd given her. Simple. Black. Embossed with a single name and address. No phone number, no explanation, just an invitation. Elena turned the card over in her hands, her mind racing. She should throw it away, should forget the whole thing. Darian Varelli was dangerous. Everyone said so. Getting involved with him would only make things worse. But as she sat there in the dark, alone, with the memory of Marcus's wedding still fresh in her mind, she realized she didn't care. She was tired of being invisible, tired of being pitied, tired of being the woman people whispered about in corners. And if Darian Varelli, ruthless, feared, untouchable, was offering her a way out, maybe it was time to stop playing it safe. Elena set the card on the table and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she'd decide. Tonight, She'd just let herself breathe. The address on the card led to a restaurant Elena had only read about in magazines. Le Corbeau Noir sat tucked between two anonymous buildings in the financial district, unmarked except for a small brass plaque beside a black door. No windows. No sign. The kind of place you only knew about if you were supposed to. Elena stood on the sidewalk, second-guessing everything. She'd changed outfits 4 times. Settled on a dark green dress, simple, elegant, not trying too hard. Her hands were shaking when she'd applied her makeup. She'd almost turned back 3 times on the cab ride over. Now she was here, staring at that black door, wondering what the hell she was doing. A valet appeared from nowhere. "Miss Whitford?" She startled. "Yes." "Mr. Varelli is expecting you. Please, follow me." The valet opened the door before she could respond. Inside, the restaurant was nothing like she'd imagined. Dark wood paneling, low lighting, tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private. Classical music drifted through the air, something haunting, something she didn't recognize. The whole place felt like a secret. The valet led her through the main dining room, past tables occupied by men in expensive suits who barely glanced up, toward a private room in the back. He knocked once, then opened the door. Darian stood near the window, silhouetted against the city lights beyond. He turned when she entered, and Elena's breath caught. He looked different tonight, less severe. His jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up to his forearms, his tie loosened. He looked almost relaxed. Almost. "You came," he said. "You sound surprised." "I wasn't sure you would." Elena stepped inside, hyper-aware of the door closing behind her. They were alone, in a private room, with a man she barely knew. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. Darian's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "Honesty. I appreciate that." He gestured toward the table, already set for 2. Wine glasses, white china, silverware that probably cost more than her rent. Elena sat down carefully, trying not to fidget. Darian took the seat across from her, pouring wine into both glasses with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "You look nervous," he observed. "I am nervous." "Why?" Elena let out a shaky laugh. "Because I have no idea why I'm here, because you're—" She stopped herself. "I'm what?" "Dangerous." Darian tilted his head, considering. "Fair assessment. That doesn't bother you?" "Should it?" He took a sip of wine. "People fear what they don't understand. I've stopped trying to make them comfortable." Elena wrapped her fingers around her glass, needing something to hold on to. "So why invite me here? You don't know me. I don't know you. We danced once at a wedding I shouldn't have been at." "You're right," Darian said calmly. "I don't know you, not yet, but I know what I saw last night." "And what was that?" "Someone tired of losing." The words hit harder than they should have. Elena looked down at her wine. "I didn't realize it was that obvious." "It wasn't. Not to them." Darian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "But I've spent my entire life watching people, reading them. Most of them are predictable, scared, greedy, desperate to hold on to whatever scrap of power they think they have. You're different." "How?" "You're angry." Elena's head snapped up. Darian's gaze was steady, unflinching. "You stood in that ballroom last night and watched the man who betrayed you marry someone else. You didn't cry, didn't make a scene, didn't fall apart. You just stood there, taking it, swallowing it." He paused. "But underneath, you were furious." Elena's throat tightened. "You don't know what I was feeling, don't I?" She didn't answer. Darian set his glass down. "I know what it's like to be dismissed, to be told you're not good enough, not worth the trouble, not the right fit. I know what it's like to watch people choose wealth over loyalty, status over substance." His voice dropped lower. "And I know what it's like to decide you're done accepting that." Elena stared at him, her heart pounding. "So here's what I'm proposing," Darian continued. "An alliance." "An alliance? You want your reputation back, your standing, your life. I can give you that." Elena frowned. "Why would you do that?" "Because I need someone who can move through their world without raising suspicion. Someone they'll underestimate. Someone who can stand beside me at events, dinners, galas, and make it look natural." "You want me to—what?" Pretend to be with you? Not pretend, Darian's eyes locked onto hers. I want you to actually be with me. In public. In private. Everywhere that matters. Elena's pulse hammered. You're asking me to be your partner, he finished, in every sense of the word. She shook her head, trying to process. This is insane. Is it? Darian leaned forward. You're already invisible to them, already discarded. What do you have to lose? My dignity, Elena shot back. Your dignity? Darian's voice sharpened. They already took that. Marcus Holloway took that the moment he walked away. Standing in the shadows, pretending you're fine. That's not dignity. That's survival. And you're better than that. Elena's hands trembled. You don't know me well enough to say that. Then prove me wrong. Darian's gaze burned into hers. Walk away. Go back to your apartment. Keep your head down. Let them forget you exist, or... He paused. Step into this. Let me rebuild what they tore down. And when we're done, you won't just have your reputation back. You'll have power. Elena's breath came faster. It was insane. Reckless. Everything about this screamed danger. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. Anger. Hunger. The desperate, clawing need to stop being nothing. What's the catch? She asked quietly. Darian smiled. A real smile this time. Sharp and dangerous. The catch is that once you're in, you're in. No half measures, no backing out when things get difficult. You stand beside me and you don't flinch. No matter what they say. No matter what they do. And if I can't? Then we both lose. Elena sat back, her mind racing. She thought about Marcus, about Vivian Cross, about every person who'd looked at her with pity or contempt over the past 3 months. She thought about standing in that ballroom, invisible and irrelevant, while the man who'd promised her everything gave it all away. And she thought about the way Darian had looked at her last night, like she mattered, like she was worth something. When do we start? She heard herself say. Darian's smile widened. Tonight. Dinner arrived in waves, course after course of food Elena barely tasted. Her mind was too busy spinning, trying to catch up with what she'd just agreed to. Darian laid out the plan like a general mapping a battlefield. They'd start small, dinner at a high-profile restaurant where the right people would see them. Then a charity gala next week, one Marcus and Catherine would definitely attend. After that, a weekend trip to the coast, staying at a resort known for its society clientele. Every appearance would be calculated. Every conversation strategic. They'd move through the social landscape like a storm. Impossible to ignore. They'll talk, Darian said, slicing into his steak with surgical precision. At first they'll assume you're desperate, that I'm slumming, that it won't last. Comforting, Elena muttered. Let them think that. It makes them careless. He looked up at her. But after a few weeks, the narrative shifts. They start wondering why someone like me would choose someone like you. They start questioning their own assumptions. And then, he paused. They start seeing you differently. As what? Your trophy? As a threat. Elena blinked. A threat? You think Catherine Langford feels secure? Darian's voice was calm, almost amused. She married Marcus for his connections, his family name. But what happens when she realizes you've moved on to someone infinitely more powerful? When she sees you at events she can barely get invitations to? When people start treating you with the kind of respect they used to reserve for her? Elena's pulse quickened. Darian leaned back, swirling his wine. Reputation isn't about truth, it's about perception. Right now they perceive you as a victim. We're going to change that. Into what? Someone they can't afford to ignore. Elena stared at him, something cold and sharp settling in her chest. He was right, and she hated how much she wanted it. Yeah. The first test came 3 days later. Darian picked her up in a car that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. Sleek, black, with tinted windows and an interior that smelled like leather and money. Where are we going? Elena asked as they pulled away from her building. Lucien's. Her stomach dropped. The restaurant? Yes. Lucien's wasn't just a restaurant. It was the restaurant. The place where deals were made, alliances formed, reputations built or destroyed. Getting a reservation took weeks. Getting a table in the main room took connections most people didn't have. Darian, I'm not ready for this. You are. I'm not. Her voice cracked. Everyone's going to be there. Marcus's friends, Catherine's family, people who've spent the last 3 months watching me fall apart. Good. Darian's tone was unyielding. Let them watch you rise. Elena pressed her hands together to stop them from shaking. Darian glanced over at her. You're scared. Of course I'm scared. Why? Because, she struggled for words. Because I don't belong there anymore. Because they know it. Because walking in there with you is going to make everything worse. Elena, Darian's voice cut through her spiral. Look at me. She did. His eyes were dark, steady, utterly calm. You're not the woman they remember. Not anymore. You're the woman who walked into a private dinner with one of the most dangerous men they've ever heard of. You're the woman who said yes when everyone else says no. You're the woman who stopped caring what they think. But I do care, Elena whispered. Then lie. His gaze didn't waver. Lie so convincingly they believe it, because the moment you walk in there afraid, you've already lost. Elena swallowed hard. Darian reached over and took her hand. His grip was firm, grounding. You're not doing this alone. I'll be right beside you, every step. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The car pulled up to Lucien's entrance. Cameras flashed outside, photographers who lingered near the entrance, hoping to catch someone important. Darian stepped out first, then offered Elena his hand. She took it, and the cameras exploded. But inside, the restaurant was exactly as she remembered. All dim lighting and hushed conversations, tables filled with people who ran the city without ever raising their voices. The maitre d' greeted Darian by name, leading them through the dining room toward a corner table with a perfect view of the entire space. Elena felt every eye in the room track their movement. She recognized faces. Marcus's business partner, Catherine's aunt. 3 women from the charity board Elena used to sit on before her father's bankruptcy made her too toxic to associate with. They were all staring. Darian pulled out her chair, and Elena sat, trying to keep her hands from trembling. Breathe, he murmured as he took his own seat. She did. Slowly. A waiter appeared with menus, but Elena couldn't focus on the words. Her entire body was vibrating with adrenaline. They're whispering, she said under her breath. Let them. Darian. Elena. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low and calm. This is the part where you stop caring. Order something. Smile. Act like you've done this 1,000 times. She forced herself to look at the menu, picked something at random. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Across the room, she saw Vivian Cross sitting with 2 other women, all 3 of them watching with the kind of hungry interest that made Elena's skin crawl. Vivian's here, she whispered. I know. She's going to write about this. I'm counting on it. Elena's head snapped toward him. What? Darian's expression was unreadable. Vivian Cross writes what people want to read. Right now, they want to know why you're here with me. By tomorrow, her column will be full of speculation. By next week, you'll be the most talked about woman in the city. That's not a good thing. It's exactly what we need. He picked up his wine glass. Attention is power, even the negative kind. Elena's chest tightened. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the low hum of conversation. Well, this is unexpected. Elena's blood ran cold. Marcus stood beside their table, hands in his pockets, that same easy smile on his face that used to make her feel safe. Now it just made her sick. Marcus, she managed. Elena. His gaze flicked to Darian, then back to her. I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. Darian didn't stand, didn't offer his hand, just looked at Marcus with the kind of cool indifference that made it clear he wasn't impressed. Holloway, Darian said flatly. Marcus's smile faltered. Virelli, I've heard a lot about you. I'm sure you have. An awkward silence stretched between them. Marcus shifted his weight. Elena, I wanted to say, I hope there are no hard feelings about everything. Elena's hands clenched in her lap. Darian's voice was smooth, unbothered. She's fine. Marcus frowned. I was talking to Elena. And I'm answering for her. Darian's eyes were cold. She's fine. We're fine. You can go. The dismissal was brutal and absolute. Marcus's jaw tightened. Elena? She looked up at him, this man who'd once been her entire future, and felt nothing. I'm fine, Marcus, she said quietly. Really? For a moment, Marcus just stood there, clearly waiting for something, an apology, an explanation, some sign that she still cared. He didn't get it. Finally, he nodded stiffly. Right, well, enjoy your dinner. He walked away, and Elena's entire body sagged with relief. Darian watched him go, then turned back to her. You did well. I didn't do anything. Exactly. He took a sip of wine. You didn't apologize, didn't explain, didn't give him anything. That's progress. Elena's hands were still shaking. He looked hurt. Good. She stared at Darian. You enjoyed that. I did. He didn't bother denying it. He deserves worse. Elena didn't argue. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Food arrived, conversations drifted around them, and Elena found herself slowly, carefully relaxing into the role Darian had given her. She smiled when he spoke, laughed at the right moments, let him refill her wine glass. And she watched as the room's attention shifted, from curiosity to interest to something that looked almost like respect. By the time they left, Elena felt like she'd run a marathon. Darian's hand rested lightly on the small of her back as they walked out, and the cameras flashed again, brighter this time. In the car, Elena finally let herself collapse against the seat. That was exhausting, she breathed. That was the easy part. She laughed, a shaky, breathless sound. That was easy? Darian glanced at her, something almost soft in his expression. You survived. That's what matters. Elena closed her eyes, her heart still racing. She'd survived, but barely. Ishul and kiss. The article hit the next morning. Elena woke up to 17 missed calls and a text from a friend she hadn't spoken to in months. Have you seen Vivian's column? Elena's stomach dropped. She pulled up the website with shaking hands. The headline screamed across the screen, Fallen Heiress Rises Again, on the arm of the city's most dangerous man. Below it, a photo. Elena and Darian leaving Lucien's, his hand on her back, her face calm and composed. She looked confident, powerful, like someone who belonged. The article was worse. Elena Whitford, the woman publicly humiliated just weeks ago when fiancé Marcus Holloway chose Langford money over Whitford loyalty, has re-emerged in spectacular fashion. Her companion? None other than Darian Varelli, the enigmatic duke whose business empire spans continents and whose reputation for ruthlessness is matched only by his wealth. Sources inside Lucien's report that Varelli was completely focused on Elena, dismissing Marcus Holloway with barely a glance when the newlywed attempted conversation. It was brutal, one diner remarked. Holloway looked like he'd been slapped. The question everyone's asking, is this a rebound, a calculated move, or has Elena Whitford traded up in the most dramatic way possible? Elena's hands trembled as she read. Her phone buzzed. Darian, did you see it? She typed back. Yes. Good. Get ready. We have a gala tonight. Elena stared at the message. Tonight, another event, another performance. She should have been terrified. But as she looked at the photo again, at the woman staring back at her, poised and unshaken, she felt something else entirely. Hunger. The gala was worse than the restaurant. It was a charity event hosted by the Langford family, Catherine's family, which meant Marcus and his new bride would be front and center all night. Elena stood in front of her mirror, dressed in a gown Darian had sent over that afternoon. It was midnight blue, elegant and sharp, the kind of dress that demanded attention without begging for it. She looked like someone who mattered. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Darian picked her up at 7. This time, she was ready. You look dangerous, he said when she slid into the car. Good. He smiled. Fast learner. The gala was held at the Langford estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city, all marble and chandeliers and old money. Elena had been here before, twice. Once for a garden party, once for Catherine's birthday. Back then, she'd been Marcus's fiancée. Someone. Now she was returning as someone else entirely. The car pulled up to the entrance, and Darian stepped out first, offering his hand. Elena took it, and they walked inside together. The ballroom was packed, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost small fortunes, champagne flowing like water. And at the center of it all, Marcus and Catherine, greeting guests like royalty. Catherine saw them first. Her smile froze. Elena watched the realization hit. Watched Catherine's gaze sweep over Darian, then Elena, then back again. For a moment, something ugly flickered across Catherine's face. Then she recovered, smile snapping back into place. "Elena," she said warmly, as if they were old friends. "What a surprise." "Catherine." Elena kept her voice light, polite. "Congratulations again?" "Thank you." Catherine's eyes flicked to Darian. "And you must be Mr. Varelli. We've heard so much about you." "Have you?" Darian's tone was pleasant, but there was an edge beneath it. Marcus stepped forward, extending his hand. "Varelli, good to see you again." Darian shook it briefly. "Holloway." The tension was suffocating. Catherine looped her arm through Marcus's, her smile bright and brittle. "Well, we're so glad you could both make it. Please, enjoy the evening." It was a dismissal. Elena and Darian moved deeper into the ballroom, and Elena finally let herself breathe. "She hates me," Elena whispered. "She's terrified of you," Darian corrected. "There's a difference." Elena glanced back. Catherine was watching them, her expression carefully blank. "Why would she be terrified?" "Because you just walked into her event with someone more powerful than her husband will ever be." Darian's voice was calm, matter of fact. "And because she knows you didn't need Marcus. You just needed someone to see what you're capable of." Elena's pulse hammered. The night unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. Darian introduced her to people she'd only read about. Business moguls, investors, politicians. He kept her close, his hand always somewhere reassuring, her back, her arm, her hand. And people noticed. They watched, whispered, approached. And slowly, painfully, Elena felt the shift. They weren't looking at her with pity anymore. They were looking at her with curiosity, interest, maybe even envy. It was intoxicating. Near midnight, Elena excused herself to the restroom. She needed a moment, just one. She was washing her hands when the door opened behind her. Catherine stepped inside. Elena's stomach dropped. They were alone. Catherine crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "So, Darian Varelli." Elena kept her voice steady. "What about him? Is it real, or are you just trying to make Marcus jealous?" Elena turned to face her fully. "Why would I care about making Marcus jealous?" Catherine's smile was sharp. "Come on, Elena. We both know you're not over him." "You're wrong." "Am I?" Catherine stepped closer. "You stood in that ballroom at our wedding watching. You couldn't even leave. That's not someone who's moved on." Elena's hands clenched. "I was there because I needed to see it, to know it was real, to accept that Marcus chose you." "And now?" "Now," Elena said quietly, "I don't think about Marcus at all." Catherine laughed, a cold, cutting sound. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe." Elena grabbed her purse. "Excuse me." She moved toward the door, but Catherine's voice stopped her. "He's using you, you know." Elena froze. "Darian Varelli," Catherine continued. "Men like him don't care about women like you. You're a prop. Something to show off until he gets bored." Elena turned slowly. "And Marcus? What was I to him?" Catherine's smile faltered. "At least Darian's honest about what he wants," Elena said, her voice steady. "Marcus pretended to love me until it was inconvenient, so forgive me if I don't take relationship advice from you." She walked out before Catherine could respond. But her hands were shaking. She found Darian near the bar, and the moment he saw her face, his expression darkened. "What happened?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "Elena." Catherine cornered me in the bathroom. She said. Elena stopped. "It doesn't matter." Darian's jaw tightened. "What did she say?" Elena looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd offered her a way out, and felt something crack open inside her chest. "She said you're using me." Darian didn't flinch. "And what do you think?" "I think," Elena's voice wavered, "I think I don't care. Even if you are." Even if this is all just strategy, I'd rather be used by someone who makes me feel like I matter than loved by someone who made me feel like I didn't. Darian stared at her for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, his hand cupping her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I'm not using you, he said quietly, but I am asking you to trust me, even when it's hard, even when people like her try to convince you otherwise. Elena's breath caught. Can you do that? He asked. She nodded. Darian's expression softened, just barely. Good. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was claiming, possessive, a statement, and every person in that ballroom saw it. When Darian pulled back, Elena was breathless, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. He smiled, dangerous and satisfied. Now they know, he murmured. Elena turned. Across the room, Marcus stood frozen, staring at them with something that looked like shock. Catherine's face was pale, her expression unreadable, and Vivian Cross stood near the entrance, phone out, practically vibrating with glee. Elena's stomach dropped. Darian, everyone just... I know. He took her hand. Come on, we're leaving. They walked out together, past the whispers, past the stares, past Marcus and Catherine, and everyone who'd ever counted Elena as irrelevant. And for the first time in months, Elena didn't feel invisible. She felt terrifying. The photos hit the internet before they even made it home. Elena sat in the back of Darian's car, scrolling through her phone with numb fingers. Twitter, Instagram, 3 different gossip sites. All of them had the same image, Darian's hand on her face, his mouth on hers, the ballroom blurred behind them. The headlines were brutal. Virelli claims his prize from discarded to desired. Elena Whitford's shocking comeback. Holloway's ex makes a statement, and it's not subtle. Stop reading, Darian said without looking up from his own phone. I can't. Elena. They're calling me calculating, a social climber. They're saying I seduced you to get back at Marcus. Let them say it. Darian's voice was sharp. It doesn't matter. It does to me. He finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. Why? Because you wanted them to think this was real? Elena's throat tightened. Isn't it? Darian didn't answer immediately. He just watched her, something complicated flickering behind his eyes. It's real enough, he said finally. Elena didn't know what that meant, didn't know if she wanted to. The car pulled up to her building, and Darian walked her to the door despite her protests. You don't have to. Come. I do. He stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. They're watching. They'll be watching for weeks. Every move you make, every place you go, you need to be ready for that. Elena's hands trembled. I don't know if I can do this. You already are. Darian reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was gentle, almost tender. Get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. He turned to leave, but Elena caught his arm. Darian, wait. He stopped. That kiss, she said quietly. Was it just for them, or... Darian's gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. What do you think? Before she could answer, he was gone. Elena stood in the hallway, heart racing, trying to make sense of everything. Inside her apartment, she collapsed onto the couch and let herself fall apart. Heck, the morning brought chaos. Elena woke to her phone vibrating nonstop. Texts, calls, emails, all from people she hadn't heard from in months, some congratulating her, some fishing for details, some barely disguised in their jealousy. And then there was the one that made her blood run cold, a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Walk away before you get hurt. Elena stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. She screenshot it and sent it to Darian. His response was immediate. Ignore it. Probably Catherine trying to scare you. Elena wanted to believe that, but something about the message felt different, darker. She was still staring at her phone when someone knocked on her door. Elena froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, she walked to the door and checked the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, older, expensively dressed, with sharp features and calculating eyes. Elena didn't recognize her. She opened the door a crack. Can I help you? The woman smiled. Elena Whitford? Who's asking? My name is Margot Stern. I'm an associate of Darian Varelli's. She paused. May I come in? Elena's instincts screamed no, but curiosity won. She opened the door wider. Margot stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over the small apartment with thinly veiled judgment. Cozy. What do you want? Elena asked, crossing her arms. Margot turned to face her. To warn you. About? Darian. Margot's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. He's a brilliant man, ruthless, strategic, but he's also dangerous, and the people he keeps around him, they don't last. Elena's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen this before. Margot walked to the window, looking out at the street below. He finds someone useful, uses them, and when they're no longer valuable, she snapped her fingers. Gone. That's not, isn't it? Margot turned back. How much do you actually know about him, Elena? About what he does? About the people he's destroyed to get where he is? Elena's hands clenched. He's helping me. Margot laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. Is he? Or is he rebuilding your reputation so he can use you to get closer to people he can't reach on his own? Marcus Holloway's connections, Catherine Langford's family, all the society networks you used to belong to. Elena's stomach dropped. That kiss last night? Margot continued. That wasn't romance. That was strategy. He's positioning you exactly where he needs you. And when he's done, she shrugged. You'll be just another casualty. Get out, Elena said, her voice shaking. Margot studied her for a long moment. I'm trying to help you. By lying? I'm not lying. Margot pulled a business card from her purse and set it on the table. When you're ready to hear the truth, call me. She walked out, leaving Elena standing alone in her apartment, her mind spinning. She didn't tell Darian about Margot's visit. She should have. She knew that. But something held her back. Some stubborn, terrified part of her that needed to know if Margot was right. Instead, she threw herself into the role Darian had given her. Over the next 2 weeks, they were everywhere. Dinner at the opera. A weekend at a resort in the mountains. A private auction where Darian bought a painting for an amount that made Elena's head spin. And at every event, people watched, some with curiosity, some with envy, some with barely concealed hostility. Elena learned to ignore them, learned to smile, to laugh, to play the part of the woman who'd traded up so spectacularly that everyone else looked like they'd settled. But beneath the surface, doubt gnawed at her. Was Margot right? Was this all just strategy? Did Darian actually care about her? Or was she just a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand? She was still wrestling with those questions when Darian showed up at her apartment unannounced one night. Pack a bag, he said. Elena blinked. What? We're leaving. Leaving where? My estate. 2 hours outside the city. He stepped inside, his expression serious. Something's happened. We need to talk, but not here. Elena's heart hammered. Darian, what's going on? I'll explain in the car. Pack. She didn't argue. 20 minutes later, they were on the highway, the city lights fading behind them. Darian drove in silence, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the wheel. Are you going to tell me what's happening? Elena asked finally. Someone's been digging into my business. What kind of digging? The dangerous kind. He glanced at her. They've been asking questions, offering money for information, trying to find weaknesses. Elena's stomach twisted. Who? I don't know yet, but whoever it is, they're connected, powerful, and they know about you. The words landed like ice water. Me? You've been seen with me, a lot. That makes you a target. Elena's breath came faster. A target for what? Darian didn't answer. The estate appeared like something out of a different century, sprawling grounds, stone walls, iron gates that opened automatically as they approached. Inside, the house was all dark wood and high ceilings, elegant but cold. Darian led her to a sitting room where a fire crackled in the hearth. Sit, he said. Elena sat. Darian poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. She took it with shaking hands. I need to know something, he said, his voice low. Has anyone approached you? Asked questions about me? About us? Elena's mind flashed to Margot. Yes, she admitted. Darian's expression darkened. Who? A woman named Margot Stern. She came to my apartment, said she was an associate of yours, warned me about you. Darian set his glass down slowly. What exactly did she say? That you were using me, that I was just a tool to get closer to Marcus's connections, Catherine's family, that when you were done you'd throw me away. Elena's voice wavered. Is she right? Darian stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Margot Stern doesn't work for me. She works for Victor Kane. Elena frowned. Who's Victor Kane? My enemy. Darian's voice was cold. A man who spent the last 5 years trying to destroy everything I've built, and now he's using you to get to me. Elena's blood ran cold. Why? Because he knows I care about you. The words hung in the air between them. Elena's heart stopped. What? Darian stepped closer. You asked me if that kiss was real, if any of this was real. He reached out, his hand cupping her face the same way he had at the gala. It is. All of it. I didn't plan for this, didn't want it, but somewhere between that first dinner and now, you stopped being strategy and started being… He paused, his thumb brushing her cheek. Everything. Elena couldn't breathe. Victor knows that, Darian continued, and he's going to use it against me. Against us. How? I don't know yet, but whatever he's planning, it's going to be bad. And you need to be ready. Elena pulled back, her mind racing. Then maybe I should leave. Walk away before… No. Darian's voice was firm. If you leave now, he wins. He destroys you to hurt me, and I lose the one thing… He stopped himself. The one thing what? Elena whispered. Darian looked at her, his expression raw in a way she'd never seen. The one thing that makes any of this worth fighting for. Elena's chest tightened. Before she could respond, Darian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, his expression shifting from vulnerable to lethal in seconds. What is it? Elena asked. Darian's jaw clenched. We need to go, now. Go where? Back to the city. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. Victor just leaked something, and it's already going viral. Tag. They made it back in 90 minutes. Darian drove like the road was on fire, his knuckles white on the wheel. Elena sat beside him, her phone clutched in her lap, watching the internet explode in real time. The story had been posted on every major gossip site, every news outlet, every social media platform. Darian Viarelli. Predator or protector? Sources claim Viarelli manipulated vulnerable woman into relationship Elena Whitford, victim or willing participant. Below the headlines, a carefully constructed narrative. Anonymous sources claiming Darian had targeted Elena specifically because she was vulnerable. That he'd orchestrated everything, the dinner, the gala, the public displays, to rebuild her reputation so he could control her. That he'd isolated her from friends and family. That he'd used psychological manipulation to make her dependent on him. That Elena wasn't his partner. She was his prisoner. Elena's hands shook as she read. This is insane. It's calculated, Darian said, his voice tight. Victor knows exactly what he's doing. He's painting me as a monster and you as a victim. And people will believe it because it fits the narrative they already have. Ruthless foreigner takes advantage of desperate woman. But it's not true. Doesn't matter. Truth doesn't matter. Perception does. Elena's stomach churned. So what do? We fight back. How? Darian pulled up to her building and killed the engine. We go public, together. We tell the real story, your story. How you chose this. How you're not a victim. Elena stared at him. And if they don't believe me, then we deal with it. Darian turned to face her fully. But I need to know. Are you with me? Because if we do this, there's no going back. Victor will come after you harder. The press will tear you apart. People will call you a liar, a traitor, worse. And I can't protect you from all of it. Elena's heart pounded. She thought about Marcus. About standing in that ballroom, invisible and irrelevant. She thought about the past 2 weeks. The power, the attention, the way people looked at her like she mattered. She thought about Darian's hand on her face, his voice saying, you stopped being strategy and started being everything. And she made her choice. I'm with you, she said. Darian's expression softened. You're sure? Yes. He nodded. Then we hold a press conference, tomorrow. You and me. We tell them the truth. Elena swallowed hard. What if the truth isn't enough? Then we make it enough. The press conference was set for noon. Elena barely slept. She spent the night pacing her apartment, rehearsing what she'd say, trying to convince herself she could do this. Darian arrived at 10 with a team, publicists, lawyers, advisors. They ran through the plan a dozen times. What to say? What not to say? How to handle hostile questions. Elena felt like she was preparing for war. By 11:30, they were in the car, headed to the hotel where the conference would be held. The lobby was packed, reporters, cameras, photographers, all jostling for position. Darian took her hand. Ready? Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They walked in together. The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction, cameras flashing. The noise was overwhelming. Darian guided her to the podium, his hand never leaving hers. He spoke first, his voice calm and commanding. Thank you all for coming. I'm here today to address the allegations that have been made against me. Allegations that are false, malicious, and designed to destroy my reputation and hurt someone I care about deeply. He paused, glancing at Elena. Elena Whitford is not my victim. She is my partner, and she's here to tell you her story, in her own words. He stepped back and Elena moved to the microphone. Her hand shook. Her mouth was dry, but she forced herself to speak. My name is Elena Whitford, and I'm not a victim. The room fell silent. 3 months ago, I lost everything. My father's business collapsed. My fiancé left me for someone wealthier. My reputation was destroyed. And for a while I believed I deserved it, that I wasn't enough, that I'd never be enough. Her voice steadied. Then I met Darian Varelli, and he offered me something no one else did, a chance to rebuild. Not because he felt sorry for me, not because he wanted to control me, but because he saw something in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself. She looked out at the sea of faces. Yes, our relationship is strategic. Yes, we've made calculated appearances. But that doesn't make it fake. It makes it smart. And I'm tired of being told that a woman who makes strategic choices must be a victim. I chose this. I chose him. And I'm not apologizing for it. The room exploded with questions. Elena stepped back, her heart racing. Darian was beside her immediately, his arm around her waist, grounding her. That's all we have to say, he told the reporters. Thank you. They pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions, the accusations, the demands for more. Outside, Elena finally let herself breathe. You did well, Darian said. It didn't feel like it. It was perfect. Elena wanted to believe him. They were halfway to the car when she saw him, Marcus, standing near the entrance, watching. Elena stopped. Darian followed her gaze, his expression hardening. Ignore him. But Marcus was already walking toward them. Elena, wait. She turned. What do you want, Marcus? He looked uncomfortable, his hands in his pockets. I wanted to. I saw the press conference, and He struggled for words. Are you okay? Elena stared at him. You're asking me that now? I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but this... He gestured vaguely toward the hotel. This isn't you. You're not this person. What person? Someone who fights back. Marcus's voice dropped. Someone who stands in front of cameras and tells the world they're not a victim. The Elena I knew would have... The Elena you knew doesn't exist anymore, Elena cut him off. You made sure of that. Marcus flinched. Darian stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. You need to leave. Marcus ignored him, his eyes locked on Elena. He's using you, can't you see that? And what were you doing? Elena's voice rose. When you proposed to me, was that real? Or were you just using me until someone better came along? That's not... It is. Elena's hands clenched. At least Darian's honest about what he wants. You pretended to love me, and the moment things got hard, you walked away. So don't stand here and tell me who's using who. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. Elena turned away, done with him, done with all of it. She and Darian were almost to the car when the explosion happened. Not literal, but close. Someone in the crowd screamed. Elena spun around. A man was shoving his way through the reporters, his face twisted with rage, something dark and metallic in his hand. Darian saw it at the same moment she did. "Gun!" someone shouted. Chaos erupted. People scattered. Cameras dropped. Screams filled the air. Darian grabbed Elena, yanking her behind him, his body a shield between her and the threat. The man raised the weapon. "You destroyed my life!" he screamed at Darian. "You took everything from me!" Darian didn't move, didn't flinch. "Put it down," he said calmly. "No." The man's hand shook. "You ruined me. My business, my family. You took it all. And now I'm taking something from you." His gaze shifted to Elena. Her blood turned to ice. "Don't," Darian said, his voice deadly quiet. But the man was already moving, the gun swinging toward her. Everything happened in seconds. Darian lunged. A shot fired. Glass shattered somewhere behind them. Security tackled the man to the ground, and the gun skidded across the pavement. Elena stood frozen, her ears ringing, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. Darian's hands were on her face, his voice urgent. "Are you hurt? Elena, look at me. Are you hurt?" She couldn't speak, couldn't move. "Elena, I'm fine," she managed. Darian pulled her against him, his arms tight around her, and Elena felt him shaking. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The man was screaming, still struggling against the security guards holding him down. And Elena realized with sickening clarity that Margot had been wrong. Darian wasn't using her. He was protecting her, even if it killed him. They didn't go home. Darian took her back to the estate, his driving reckless and fast, his jaw clenched so tight Elena thought it might break. Inside, he paced the sitting room like a caged animal. "This is exactly what Victor wanted," he said, his voice rough. "He sent that man. I know he did. He wanted to prove I can't keep you safe. That being with me puts you in danger." Elena sank onto the couch, still shaking. "Who was he?" "Someone I bought out years ago. His company was failing. I gave him a fair offer. He refused. I took it anyway." Darian ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't know he'd—" He stopped. "This is my fault." "It's not." "It is." Darian turned to face her, his expression anguished. "You almost died today because of me. Because Victor knew the best way to hurt me was through you." Elena stood, walking toward him. "I'm okay." "This time," Darian's voice cracked. "But what about next time? What if I can't stop it? What if—" Elena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Stop." "Elena, I said stop." Her voice was firm. "I knew the risks. I chose this. And I'm not walking away because some psychopath with a gun proved that loving you is dangerous. I already knew that." Darian stared at her. "Loving me?" Elena's breath caught. She'd said it without thinking, without meaning to. But now it was out there. "Yes," she whispered. "I love you. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was that first dinner. Maybe it was the gala. Maybe it was every moment between. But I do. And I'm not running." Darian's hands came up to cover hers, his eyes searching her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "Probably not." Elena managed a shaky smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway." Darian pulled her against him, his mouth crashing down on hers. This kiss was different from the others. Desperate. Raw. Like he was trying to prove something. To her, to himself, to the world. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathless. "I need to end this," Darian said. "Victor, this war, all of it, before he hurts you again." "How?" Darian's expression hardened. "By giving him exactly what he wants." Elena frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means—" He paused. "It means marrying you." Elena's heart stopped. "What?" "Victor's entire strategy is built on the idea that you're a pawn, that I'm manipulating you, that you'll eventually leave or turn on me." Darian's hands tightened on her waist. "But if you marry me, if we show the world that this is permanent, unshakable, he loses his leverage, and we gain legal protections, financial security, and a unified front he can't break." Elena stared at him, her mind spinning. "You want to marry me as strategy?" "No." Darian's voice softened. I want to marry you because I love you. The strategy is just a bonus. Elena's breath caught. You love me? Yes? Since when? Since the moment you took my hand at that wedding and decided to stop being invisible. Darian brushed a strand of hair from her face. Maybe before that. I don't know. All I know is that losing you isn't an option, so marry me. Not because it's smart, not because it's safe, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Elena's eyes filled with tears. This was insane. Reckless. Everything about this was moving too fast, but when she looked at Darian, at this dangerous, ruthless man who'd risked his life to protect hers, she couldn't think of a single reason to say no. Okay, she whispered. Darian's expression shifted. Shock, relief, something that looked almost like joy. Okay? Yes, I'll marry you. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. They were really doing this. And somewhere out there, Victor Kane was watching, waiting, planning his next move. But for now, in this moment, Elena didn't care. She'd made her choice. And she wasn't backing down. They got married 48 hours later. No grand ceremony, no guest list, just a quiet civil service in a courthouse 2 towns over, with Darian's lawyer as witness and a judge who asked no questions. Elena wore a simple cream dress she'd bought that morning. Darian wore the same dark suit he'd been wearing when they met. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes. But when the judge pronounced them married and Darian slipped a ring onto her finger, white gold, elegant, understated, Elena felt the weight of it like an anchor. She was Elena Virelli now. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Outside the courthouse, Darian kissed her like they had all the time in the world, even though they both knew they didn't. We need to move fast, he said against her mouth. Victor will have heard by now, and he's going to retaliate. Let him try, Elena said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Darian pulled back, studying her face. You're not scared anymore. I'm terrified, she corrected, but I'm also done running. Something fierce flashed in Darian's eyes. Good, because we're about to walk straight into the fire. The plan was simple and completely insane. They were going to Victor Kane's territory, his city, his network, the place where he held all the power, and they were going to dismantle him piece by piece. He owns half the business infrastructure in Ashmont, Darian explained as they drove north that afternoon. Shipping, imports, construction. He's built an empire on exploiting legal loopholes and crushing anyone who challenges him. Sounds familiar, Elena said. Darian glanced at her. The difference is I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Victor hides behind charity galas and political donations. He wants people to think he's legitimate. That makes him vulnerable. How? Because legitimate businessmen have reputations to protect, and reputations can be destroyed. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What are we going to do? Expose him. Everything he's built is held together by secrets, bribes, blackmail, deals that would land him in prison if anyone knew about them. We're going to find those secrets, and we're going to make them public. And you think he'll just let us do that? No. Darian's jaw tightened. Which is why we need to be smarter, faster, and willing to do things he won't see coming. Elena looked out the window at the landscape rushing past. Like what? Like using you. Her head snapped toward him. What? You're not who he expects, Darian said. He thinks you're weak, manipulated, a victim who'll crumble under pressure. But you're not, and that's our advantage. Elena's pulse quickened. What do you need me to do? Darian reached over and took her hand. Something dangerous, something that could backfire spectacularly if you're not careful. Tell me. He did, and Elena felt her entire world shift. Ashmont looked like a city trying too hard to be important. Tall buildings, expensive restaurants, waterfront developments that screamed new money. But underneath the polish, Elena could see the cracks, abandoned warehouses near the docks, neighborhoods that clearly hadn't benefited from the city's growth. People who looked tired and worn down. Victor Kane's empire, built on the backs of people who had no choice but to let him. Darian had secured them a penthouse suite in the nicest hotel downtown, all glass and steel and views that went on forever. It felt like a fortress, or a target. Victor will know we're here within the hour, Darian said, pouring them both drinks. He has eyes everywhere. Good, Elena said. Let him know. Darian smiled. You're really not scared. I didn't say that. Elena took the glass he offered. I just said I'm done running. There's a difference. That night they went over the plan again and again until Elena could recite it in her sleep. Step 1. Elena would attend a charity luncheon the next day, one of Victor Kane's events, designed to make him look philanthropic and generous. Step 2. She'd get close to his inner circle. The wives, the business partners, the people who thought they were untouchable because Victor protected them. Step 3. She'd plant seeds. Little comments, strategic observations, things that would make them doubt Victor's control. Things that would make them question whether their secrets were really safe. It's psychological warfare, Darian explained. You're not trying to destroy him in one move. You're trying to make him paranoid. Make him wonder who's talking, who's leaking information, who can be trusted. And when he starts turning on his own people, that's when we strike. Elena swallowed hard. And if they see through me? They won't. Darian's voice was firm. You've spent months learning how to play this game. You know how to read people, how to make them comfortable, how to make them underestimate you. This is just another performance. Except this time, you're not performing for approval. You're performing for survival. Elena nodded, trying to steady her breathing. Darian stepped closer, his hands settling on her shoulders. I wouldn't ask you to do this if I didn't think you could. But I need to know. Are you sure? Elena looked up at him, at this man who'd become her husband, her partner, her entire world in the span of weeks. I'm sure, she said. He kissed her forehead. Then let's burn his empire to the ground. Ansken. The charity luncheon was held at an estate that made the Langford mansion look modest. Sprawling gardens, marble fountains, staff in white gloves serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than most people's meals. Elena walked in alone, wearing a pale blue dress that Darian had chosen specifically because it made her look soft, harmless, non-threatening. She felt like a wolf in sheep's clothing. The room was full of women who looked like they'd never had a hard day in their lives. Designer everything, perfect hair, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Elena recognized a few faces from the society pages. Donors, philanthropists, the kind of women who threw money at problems so they didn't have to think about them. She grabbed a glass of champagne and drifted toward a group near the windows. Absolutely devastated when the school closed, one of them was saying. All those poor children. Victor's foundation is helping, though, another chimed in. I heard he's personally funding a new building. He's so generous. Elena took a sip of champagne and stepped closer. Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. You're talking about the elementary school on Riverside? The women turned, their expressions politely curious. Yes, the first woman said. Are you familiar with it? I read about the closure in the news, Elena said smoothly. Such a tragedy. Though I have to admit, I was surprised it took so long. The building had structural issues for years, didn't it? A flicker of confusion crossed one woman's face. I'm not sure. Oh, I thought everyone knew. Elena kept her tone light, conversational. The city inspectors flagged it back in 2019, but the repairs kept getting delayed. Budget issues, I think. Or maybe it was something else. She paused, as if just remembering. Didn't Victor Kane own the construction company that was supposed to handle the renovations? Silence. The women exchanged glances. I don't know about that, one of them said carefully. Probably nothing, Elena said with a dismissive wave. I'm sure it's just coincidence. Anyway, it's wonderful that his foundation is stepping in now. Very generous. She drifted away before they could respond, leaving the seed planted. Over the next hour, she worked the room like a surgeon with a scalpel. A comment here about delayed permits on a housing development Victor owned. A question there about a shipping contract that seemed unusually profitable. A casual observation about how convenient it was that Victor's competitors kept running into regulatory problems right before major deals. Nothing direct, nothing accusatory, just little cracks in the foundation. By the time lunch was served, Elena could see the whispers starting. Women leaning close to each other, voices low, expressions uncertain. She was halfway through her salad when a voice cut through the chatter. Elena Whitford. Elena looked up. A woman stood beside her table, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that commanded attention without asking for. "Actually, it's Elena Varelli now," Elena said calmly. The woman's eyebrow arched. "So I heard. Quite the whirlwind romance. Love doesn't wait for permission." "No." The woman's smile was thin. "But it often waits for opportunity. My name is Celeste Vaughn. I'm a friend of Victor Kane's." Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "It's nice to meet you." "Is it?" Celeste sat down without being invited. "Because I have to wonder what brings Darian Varelli's new bride to one of Victor's events. Doesn't seem like your husband's usual crowd." "I like to support good causes," Elena said simply. "Do you?" Celeste leaned back, studying her. "Or are you here to cause trouble?" Elena met her gaze steadily. "Why would I want to cause trouble?" "Because your husband has been trying to destroy Victor for years, and now, conveniently, you show up asking pointed questions about construction contracts and regulatory delays." Celeste's voice dropped. "Do you think we're stupid?" "No," Elena said quietly. "I think you're complicit." Celeste's eyes narrowed. Elena set down her fork. "Victor Kane has built his empire by exploiting people who can't fight back, by cutting corners, bribing officials, and crushing anyone who gets in his way. You all know it. You've benefited from it, and you've turned a blind eye because it's easier than asking questions." "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." Elena's voice was steady. "And the thing about truth is that it doesn't stay buried forever. Eventually, someone talks. Someone leaks a document. Someone gets tired of protecting a man who only protects himself. And when that happens," she paused, "all of you who stood beside him will go down with him." Celeste stared at her for a long moment. Then she stood. "You have no idea what you're getting into." "Don't I?" Elena looked up at her. "I've already survived one public humiliation. I've already been called weak, desperate, manipulated. And I'm still here, still standing. So forgive me if I'm not intimidated by a man who hides behind charity luncheons and political donations." Celeste's jaw tightened. "Victor will destroy you." "He can try." Celeste walked away, and Elena forced herself to keep breathing. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding, but she'd done it. She'd drawn first blood. Darian was waiting when she got back to the hotel. "How did it go?" he asked the moment she walked in. "I think I just declared war," Elena said, collapsing onto the couch. Darian sat beside her. "Tell me everything." She did. Every conversation, every planted seed, every reaction. When she finished, Darian was smiling. "You're perfect." "I'm terrified." "That too." He pulled her against him. "But you did exactly what we needed. By tomorrow, Victor's people will be questioning everything, and that's when we hit them with the real ammunition." Elena pulled back. "What ammunition?" Darian stood and walked to his laptop, pulling up a series of files. "While you were at the luncheon, I was meeting with someone. A former employee of Victor's. Someone who kept records." Elena's breath caught. "Records of what?" "Everything." Darian's voice was cold, satisfied. "Bribes, blackmail, illegal contracts. 20 years of evidence that Victor Kane is not the philanthropist he pretends to be." Elena stared at the screen. "This could destroy him." "It will destroy him, but only if we use it right." Darian closed the laptop. "We can't just dump this online and hope it sticks. Victor has lawyers, spin doctors, politicians in his pocket. He'll bury it, discredit the source, claim it's fabricated. We need something bigger." "Like what?" "Like a federal investigation." Elena's eyes widened. "Can we do that?" "If we have the right leverage." Darian pulled out his phone. "And I think we just might." Over the next 3 days, Elena watched Darian work with the precision of a master strategist. He contacted journalists, not the gossip columnist who'd covered their relationship, but investigative reporters who'd spent years trying to crack Victor Kane's empire. He reached out to former business partners Victor had screwed over, people with grudges and evidence and nothing left to lose. He built a coalition of enemies, all united by one goal, taking Victor down. And through it all, Elena played her part. She attended more events, made more comments, planted more doubts. She became the specter haunting Victor's inner circle, the woman who smiled sweetly while asking questions no one wanted to answer. And slowly, inevitably, the cracks widened. One of Victor's business partners quietly withdrew from a major deal. A city councilman who'd been on Victor's payroll suddenly announced he was cooperating with a federal audit. Two members of Victor's charitable foundation resigned without explanation. The empire was crumbling, and Victor Kane knew exactly who to blame. The confrontation came on a Thursday night. Elena and Darian were having dinner at a restaurant downtown when Victor walked in. He didn't bother with subtlety, just walked straight to their table, his expression cold and furious. "You're making a mistake," he said without preamble. Darian didn't look up from his meal. "Am I? You think you can come into my city and destroy what I've built?" Victor's voice was low, dangerous. "You think people will believe whatever lies you're spreading?" "They're not lies," Elena said quietly. Victor's gaze snapped to her. "You should stay out of this." "I'm already in it." "Because he dragged you into it." Victor gestured at Darian. "Do you really think he cares about you? You're a tool, a pawn. The moment you're no longer useful—" "That's rich," Elena interrupted, "coming from someone who spent 20 years using people as pawns." Victor's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Elena leaned forward. "I know about the construction contracts you rigged, the safety inspections you bribed officials to ignore, the housing developments you built with substandard materials because it was cheaper and you knew no one would hold you accountable." Victor's expression darkened. "You can't prove any of that." "Can't I?" Elena's voice was steady. "Because I've spent the last week talking to your people, your partners, your so-called friends, and you know what I've learned? They're scared. Not of you, of what happens when the truth comes out. And some of them are already talking. You're bluffing." "Am I?" Darian finally looked up, his expression calm. "Check your phone, Victor." Victor pulled out his phone. His face went pale. "What you're looking at," Darian said quietly, "is a federal subpoena. Your financial records, your business dealings, your charitable foundation, all of it is now under investigation. And before you blame me, you should know that half a dozen of your former employees have already agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for immunity." Victor's hand shook. "You can't do this." "I didn't." Darian's smile was cold. "You did. By building an empire on lies and corruption and thinking no one would ever call you on it." Victor slammed his phone down on the table. "This isn't over." "Yes," Elena said quietly, "it is." Victor stared at her, something like hatred burning in his eyes. Then he turned and walked out. The restaurant was silent. Elena's hands were shaking, but she forced herself to pick up her fork and take a bite of food like nothing had happened. Darian watched her, something like pride in his expression. "You okay?" "No," Elena admitted, "but I will be." He reached across the table and took her hand. "We just won." Elena looked at him, at this man who'd pulled her out of the shadows and taught her how to fight. "Not yet," she said, "but we're close." Bam. The news broke 3 days later. Federal investigators raiding Victor Kane's offices. Arrests made. Assets frozen. A criminal investigation that promised to unravel decades of corruption. The headlines were everywhere. Kane Empire collapses under federal scrutiny. Businessman Victor Kane faces charges of fraud, bribery, racketeering. Former employees testify. He thought he was untouchable. Elena watched the coverage from the hotel room, her heart pounding. It was real. It was actually happening. Darian stood beside her, his arm around her waist. "How do you feel?" "Like I just watched someone's life fall apart." "He destroyed a lot of lives first," Darian reminded her gently. "I know." Elena leaned into him. "But it's still a lot." "Yeah," Darian kissed the top of her head. "It is." They stayed like that for a while, watching the news, processing what they'd done. Then Darian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the message, and smiled. "We need to go." "Where?" "You'll see." Bishpatek. They drove back to the city, not Ashmont, but home. The car pulled up to a building Elena recognized immediately. The Ashford Grand Ballroom, the same place where this had all started, where she'd stood invisible and irrelevant while Marcus married someone else. "Why are we here?" Elena asked. "Because," Darian said, helping her out of the car, "there's someone who wants to see you." Inside, the ballroom was set up for an event, some kind of gala by the look of it. But instead of a crowd, there were just a handful of people, and standing near the center of the room was Marcus. Elena's breath caught. Darian squeezed her hand. "It's okay. He asked to talk. I said it was up to you." Elena looked at Marcus, this man who'd once been her entire future, and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a distant kind of curiosity. "Okay," she said. Darian nodded and stepped back, giving them space. Marcus walked toward her, looking uncomfortable and uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. "Elena," he said, "thank you for coming." "What do you want, Marcus?" He took a breath. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For how I treated you. For leaving when things got hard. For—" He stopped. "For being a coward." Elena stared at him. "Okay. That's it?" Marcus looked surprised. "Just okay?" "What do you want me to say?" Elena asked. "That I forgive you? That it's fine?" "It's not fine, Marcus. What you did hurt me. A lot. But I've moved on, and I don't need your apology to do that." Marcus nodded slowly. "I saw the news about Victor Kane, about everything you and Darian did. And I realized—" He struggled for words. "I realized that I never really knew you. The woman I was with, she was safe, predictable. But you—" He gestured vaguely. "You're not that person anymore. Maybe you never were." "No," Elena said quietly. "I was, but I'm not anymore." Marcus smiled sadly. "Catherine and I are getting divorced." Elena blinked. "What?" "Turns out marrying someone for their money isn't a great foundation for a relationship." He laughed bitterly. "Who knew?" "I'm sorry," Elena said automatically. "Don't be." Marcus looked at her. "You were right. At the gala, when you said, 'I pretended to love you,' I did. I convinced myself it was real because it was convenient, but it wasn't, and you deserved better." Elena felt something in her chest loosen. "Yeah, I did." "For what it's worth," Marcus said, "I think you found it." Elena glanced back at Darian, who was watching from across the room. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think I did." Marcus nodded. "Be happy, Elena. You've earned it." He walked away, and Elena stood there for a moment, processing. Then Darian was beside her, his hand warm on her back. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah." Elena turned to face him. "I really am." "Good." Darian smiled. "Because we have one more stop." "Where?" "You'll see." The car took them to a building Elena didn't recognize. Sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Inside, a small group of people waited. Lawyers, accountants, business advisors. And sitting at the head of the table, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper smile. "Mrs. Varelli," she said, standing. "It's an honor." Elena blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "Not yet." The woman extended her hand. "My name is Adrienne Locke. I'm the lead prosecutor on the Victor Kane case." Elena shook her hand, confused. "Why am I here?" "Because," Adrienne said, "you and your husband just handed us the biggest corruption case this state has seen in decades. And I wanted to thank you personally." Elena's eyes widened. You exposed a criminal empire," Adrienne interrupted. "You gave us evidence, witnesses, leverage. Without you, Victor Kane would still be operating with impunity." Elena looked at Darian, who was smiling quietly. "We did this together," Elena said. "Yes," Adrienne agreed. "You did. And because of that, a lot of people are going to get justice. People who couldn't fight back before. People who thought no one cared." Elena's throat tightened. Adrienne pulled out a folder and set it on the table. "There's something else. Victor Kane's assets are being seized. His properties, his accounts, his holdings. And under federal law, a portion of recovered assets in cases like this can be allocated to victims and whistleblowers. Elena frowned. What does that mean? It means, Adrian said, that you and Mr. Varelli are entitled to compensation for your role in bringing him down. A significant amount. Elena's head spun. How significant? Adrian named a figure that made Elena's knees weak. Darian caught her arm, steadying her. We don't need— Take it, Adrian said firmly. You earned it. And more importantly, you can use it to do good, to help the people Victor hurt, to build something better. Elena looked at Darian. He looked at her, and slowly they both nodded. Okay, Elena said. Okay. Adrian smiled. Then congratulations, Mrs. Varelli. You just became one of the most powerful women in the city. Outside, Elena stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the city lights, trying to process everything. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, irrelevant, a woman people pitied or mocked. Now she was standing beside the man she loved, with resources to rebuild not just her own life, but the lives of people who'd been crushed by someone like Victor. How are you feeling? Darian asked. Elena turned to him. Like I just stepped into someone else's life. You didn't. Darian pulled her close. This is your life. You built it, you fought for it, and now you get to decide what comes next. Elena looked up at him, at this man who'd seen her when no one else had, who'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. What do you want to come next? She asked. Darian smiled. Honestly, I don't care, as long as you're in it. Elena kissed him, long and slow, there on the sidewalk with the city humming around them. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Then let's build something, she said, something that lasts. Darian's eyes gleamed. Together? Always. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just for survival, but for something better, something real, something worth fighting for. 3 years passed like a dream Elena kept expecting to wake up from. But she didn't wake up. This was real, the foundation they'd built, the lives they'd changed, the empire they'd created from the ashes of Victor Kane's corruption. The Varelli Foundation occupied an entire floor of a renovated building in the heart of the city, the same neighborhood that had once housed Victor's crumbling warehouses. Now it was a hub of activity. Job training programs, small business grants, housing assistance for families displaced by predatory development deals. Elena stood at the window of her office, looking down at the street below, where a ribbon-cutting ceremony was about to begin. Another community center opening, the 5th one this year. You're going to be late, Darian said from the doorway. Elena turned. He looked the same as he had 3 years ago, sharp, dangerous, impossibly handsome in a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. But there was something softer in his expression now, something that hadn't been there before. Peace, maybe, or just the quiet satisfaction of knowing they'd won. I'm nervous, Elena admitted. Why? You've done this a dozen times. Not in front of them. Darian walked over, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They don't matter. Yes, they do. Elena leaned back against him. They're the whole point. Below, she could see the crowd gathering. City officials, donors, journalists. And near the front, standing awkwardly beside the mayor, were Marcus and Catherine. Well, Marcus and his ex-wife, Catherine. They'd both reached out separately over the past year, Marcus to apologize again, Catherine to ask if Elena would consider partnering with her on a women's business initiative. Elena had said yes to Catherine. The woman had surprised her, turning her divorce into a launching pad for genuine philanthropy instead of just social posturing. Marcus, she'd kept at a polite distance. Some wounds healed better with space. Come on, Darian said, taking her hand. Let's go show them what real power looks like. The ceremony was everything Elena had hoped for. The mayor spoke about transformation and community investment. The local councilwoman thanked the Varelli Foundation for seeing potential where others saw only problems. And then it was Elena's turn. She stepped up to the podium, looking out at the faces gathered there. Some she recognized, most she didn't, but they all looked at her with something she'd spent years chasing, respect. 3 years ago, Elena began, her voice steady, I stood in a ballroom watching my life fall apart. I thought that was the end of my story, that I'd lost everything that mattered, my reputation, my future, my place in the world. She paused, letting the words settle. I was wrong. That wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because losing everything I thought I wanted forced me to figure out what I actually needed. And what I needed wasn't approval or acceptance or a seat at someone else's table. Her gaze swept across the crowd. What I needed was purpose. The chance to build something that mattered, to help people who'd been where I'd been, invisible, dismissed, told they weren't enough. She saw Catherine wipe her eyes, saw Marcus looking down at his feet. This center represents more than just programs and services, Elena continued. It represents a choice, the choice to stop waiting for someone to save you and start building the life you deserve, the choice to stop being a victim of circumstance and become the person who changes circumstances. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. I didn't do this alone, Elena said, glancing at Darian, who stood off to the side. I had a partner who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself, who challenged me to be braver, stronger, better than I thought I could be. And together, we built something that outlasted the people who tried to destroy us. Applause rippled through the crowd. Elena smiled. So to everyone here, whether you're starting over, fighting back, or just trying to survive, know this: you're not alone, and you're stronger than you think. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. Elena stepped back from the podium, her heart pounding, and walked straight into Darian's arms. Perfect, he murmured against her hair. I almost cried. You're allowed to cry. Not in front of them, Elena said. Not yet. Darian pulled back, studying her face. When? Later. When it's just us. He kissed her forehead. Deal. The reception afterward was a blur of handshakes and congratulations, and people wanting photos with Elena and Darian. Catherine cornered Elena near the refreshments table. She looked different than she had at her wedding, less polished, more real. Her hair was simpler, her dress less ostentatious. That was a beautiful speech, Catherine said. Thank you. I mean it. Catherine hesitated. I know we didn't start off well, and I know I said some terrible things to you, but watching what you've built, she stopped. It makes me realize how small my world was, how small I was. Elena studied her. You're doing good work now. The business initiative you started has helped a lot of women, because you inspired it. Catherine's voice was quiet. You showed me what it looks like to actually use privilege for something other than maintaining privilege. And I'm trying to do the same. Elena felt something soften in her chest. That means a lot. Does it? Catherine looked uncertain. Because I wouldn't blame you if you told me to go to hell. I thought about it, Elena admitted, but holding on to anger would just make me someone I don't want to be. So instead, I'm choosing to see this, she gestured at Catherine, as proof that people can change. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry for everything. I know, Elena said gently, and I forgive you. Catherine nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you. She walked away, and Elena felt lighter somehow, like she'd finally put down a weight she'd been carrying for too long. Marcus approached next, looking nervous. Elena. Marcus. I won't take up much of your time, he said quickly. I just wanted to say, watching you today, seeing everything you've accomplished. He stopped, struggling. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry I wasn't the person who could have been part of this. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but a distant kind of pity. He'd had everything, and he'd thrown it away because he didn't know what it was worth. I'm not, Elena said honestly. Because if you had been, I wouldn't have found Darian, and I wouldn't have become this person. So in a weird way, I'm grateful you left. Marcus flinched. That's fair. It's not meant to be cruel, Elena said. It's just the truth. You taught me what I didn't want, and that was valuable too. Marcus nodded slowly. For what it's worth, he's lucky to have you. Elena smiled. I know. He walked away, and Elena felt the last piece of her old life finally, completely let go. That night, back at their penthouse overlooking the city, Elena and Darian sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, watching the lights stretch out like stars. How are you feeling? Darian asked. Exhausted, Relieved? Happy? Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. All of it. You handled Catherine and Marcus well. I had practiced letting go of people who hurt me. Darian was quiet for a moment. Then, do you ever regret it? Any of it? Elena sat up, looking at him. Regret what? This, us, the choices we made. He met her gaze. We moved fast, did dangerous things, burned a lot of bridges, and built something better in their place, Elena finished. No, I don't regret it. Do you? Never. Darian set his glass down and pulled her close. But I worry sometimes that I pushed you too hard, asked too much. You didn't push me, Elena said firmly. You challenged me. There's a difference. And everything I did, I chose to do. Even marrying me. Elena laughed. Especially marrying you. Darian smiled, but there was something tentative in his expression. There's something I need to tell you. Elena's stomach tightened. What? I've been offered a position back home, in Montellano. Montellano. Darian's homeland, the place he'd left years ago to build his empire here. What kind of position? Elena asked carefully. Minister of Economic Development. The new government wants to rebuild after years of corruption. They want someone who knows how to dismantle broken systems and build functional ones. Someone with experience taking down empires built on lies. Elena's heart raced. When? They want an answer in 2 weeks. What did you tell them? That I needed to talk to you first. Darian took her hands. Because if I do this, it means leaving, moving to Montellano, starting over in a completely different world. Elena felt the weight of the decision settle over her. For how long? At least 5 years, maybe more. And the foundation? We'd establish a trust, hire people we trust to run it, stay involved from a distance. Darian's eyes searched hers. But it would mean leaving everything we've built here, everything you've built. Elena looked out at the city, the place that had broken her and remade her, where she'd gone from invisible to powerful, from victim to victor. She thought about the foundation, the programs, the people who depended on them. She thought about Catherine and the Women's Initiative, about the community centers, about all the lives they were changing. And then she thought about Darian, this man who'd pulled her out of the darkness and taught her to fight, who'd stood beside her through chaos and danger and transformation. The choice wasn't hard. When do we leave? She asked. Darian blinked. Just like that? Just like that. Elena squeezed his hands. You asked me once if I trusted you. I said yes. That hasn't changed. And if you think we can do more good in Montellano than we can here, then that's where we should be. What about everything here? We built it to last without us, Elena said. That was always the point, creating something that could survive and grow on its own. And it will. We'll make sure of it. But you and me? She leaned forward, her forehead touching his. We're a team. Wherever you go, I go. Darian's arms wrapped around her, tight and fierce. I love you. I love you too. Elena pulled back just enough to see his face. So let's go build another empire. A better one. Darian kissed her, long and deep, and Elena felt the future opening up in front of them like a door they were about to walk through together. The announcement came 3 days later. Darian Varelli, accepting a position with the Montellano government. Elena Varelli, stepping back from day-to-day operations of the Varelli Foundation to focus on international development. The press had a field day. Some called it abandonment, others called it expansion. A few questioned whether Elena was being forced to leave. Elena ignored all of it. She spent the next 2 weeks transitioning responsibilities, ensuring every program had leadership, every initiative had funding, every promise they'd made would be kept. Catherine stepped up to chair the foundation's board. Marcus donated a significant sum with no strings attached, his version of an apology, Elena supposed. And Vivian Cross, of all people, wrote a surprisingly respectful column about Elena's journey from society's cast-off to international changemaker. Elena read it once, laughed, and deleted it. The past was done. The future was all that mattered now. Chalks. Their last night in the city, they threw a party. Not a gala, not a fundraiser, just a gathering of the people who'd mattered, the staff who'd believed in their vision, the families whose lives had changed, the community leaders who'd partnered with them. Elena moved through the crowd, hugging people, taking photos, promising to stay in touch. Near the end of the night, a woman approached her, young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and calloused hands. "Mrs. Varelli?" Elena smiled. "Please, call me Elena. I just wanted to thank you." The woman's voice shook. "I was one of the first people your foundation helped, 3 years ago. I just lost my job, was about to lose my apartment, had no idea what to do. And your program gave me job training, helped me find housing, got me back on my feet." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm so glad we could help." "It was more than help." The woman wiped her eyes. "It was hope. When I had nothing. When I thought I was invisible. You saw me. And that changed everything." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. "What are you doing now?" "I'm a paralegal, working for a nonprofit that helps tenants fight predatory landlords. And I'm applying to law school next year." The woman smiled through her tears. "Because you taught me that the people who've been knocked down are the ones who know how to fight back the hardest." Elena pulled her into a hug. "You're going to do amazing things." "Because you showed me how." When the woman walked away, Elena finally let herself cry. Darian found her a few minutes later, standing on the balcony overlooking the party. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes." Elena wiped her eyes. "Just realizing that we actually did it." "Did what?" "Changed things." Elena turned to face him. "Not just for us, for people who needed someone to believe in them. And now they're going to keep changing things, keep fighting, keep building." Darian pulled her close. "That's the whole point, isn't it? We don't stay. We plant seeds and let them grow." "Yeah." Elena leaned into him. "That's exactly the point." They stood like that for a while, watching the party below, the city beyond, the life they were about to leave behind. But Elena didn't feel sad. She felt ready. The flight to Montellano left at dawn. Elena stood at the airport looking back at the city one last time. So much had happened here, so much pain, so much transformation, so much growth. She'd arrived broken and left whole. She'd been invisible and become impossible to ignore. She'd started as a victim and ended as a force. "Ready?" Darian asked, offering his hand. Elena took it. "Always." They walked through security, through the gate, onto the plane. And as the city fell away beneath them, Elena felt something she'd never expected to feel again. Excitement. Not fear, not uncertainty, just pure electric anticipation for whatever came next. Montellano was everything and nothing like Elena expected. Mountains rising like guardians around a city built of stone and history. Markets bursting with color and noise. People who looked at Darian with a mix of respect and curiosity, who looked at Elena like they were trying to figure out who she was and what she wanted. The government welcomed them with ceremonies and speeches, formal dinners where Elena smiled and nodded and played the role of the supportive wife. But in private, behind closed doors, she and Darian strategized. They identified the same patterns they'd seen back home. Corruption masquerading as business as usual, wealthy families exploiting legal loopholes, people at the bottom getting crushed while people at the top pretended not to notice. And they started dismantling it, piece by piece. Darian worked from inside the government, pushing reforms, exposing fraud, building coalitions with leaders who actually wanted change. Elena worked from outside, meeting with community organizers, women's groups, small business owners, learning what people actually needed instead of what politicians thought they needed. Together, they became a force the old guard couldn't ignore and couldn't stop. It wasn't easy. There were threats, pushback, moments when Elena wondered if they'd bitten off more than they could chew, but they'd faced worse before, and they'd survived. 2 years into their time in Montellano, Elena received a letter. It was from Catherine. "Elena, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to update you on the foundation. We've expanded into 3 new cities, helped over 10,000 families, partnered with 50 businesses to create job training programs. But more than that, people are talking about what's possible when you stop accepting things as they are and start building what they should be. You started something that's bigger than all of us now. and I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you for everything. Catherine Elena read the letter twice, then showed it to Darian. Looks like we planted good seeds, he said. Yeah. Elena folded the letter carefully. We did. That night, they stood on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the mountains, watching the sun set over Montellano. Do you miss it? Darian asked. The city? The foundation? Sometimes, Elena admitted, but not in a way that hurts, more in a way that reminds me of what we're capable of. And here? Are you happy here? Elena thought about it, about the work they were doing, the people they were helping, the systems they were changing, about the woman she'd become. Not just powerful, but purposeful. Not just surviving, but thriving. Yeah, she said, I'm happy. Darian pulled her close, and they stood there in the fading light, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something extraordinary from the ruins. 5 years after arriving in Montellano, Darian's term ended. They'd accomplished more than Elena had thought possible. Reformed tax codes, restructured housing policies, created economic programs that actually reached people who needed them. But the work wasn't done. It never was. So what now? Elena asked on their last day in the government offices. Now, Darian said, we decide what the next chapter looks like. They sat in their apartment that night, mapping out possibilities. They could go back to the city, reclaim their old life. They could stay in Montellano, keep building on what they'd started. They could go somewhere new entirely, start fresh. What do you want? Darian asked. Elena thought about the question, really thought about it. What did she want? Not what she was supposed to want. Not what would make other people happy. Not what looked impressive or sounded good. What did she want? I want to keep fighting, she said finally. I want to keep building things that matter. I want to keep showing people that they're stronger than they think they are. Darian smiled. Where? Anywhere. Elena took his hand. Everywhere. Wherever people need someone to believe in them. So we keep moving? We keep moving. Elena leaned forward, her eyes bright. We become the people who go where the fight is. Who help build foundations and then hand them off to people who'll carry them forward. Who prove that empires built on corruption can be torn down and rebuilt into something better. Darian studied her face. You know that's a hard life. I know. No permanent home. No staying in one place. Just constant movement, constant work, constant challenges. I know, Elena repeated. But it's also a life where we get to decide what matters. Where we're not tied to one city or one system or one set of expectations. Where we're free to go wherever we're needed most. Darian's expression shifted, something like awe. When did you become the brave one? The moment you showed me I could be. Elena squeezed his hand. So what do you say? Want to change the world with me? Darian kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. Always, he said. But 10 years after the night Elena had stood in a ballroom watching her old life end, she stood on a stage in a country she'd never even heard of before arriving. Another ribbon cutting, another community center, another crowd of people who'd been invisible until someone decided to see them. Darian stood beside her, his hand warm and steady on the small of her back. And as Elena looked out at the faces gathered there, hopeful, determined, ready, she thought about how far she'd come. From the woman who'd believed she wasn't enough to the woman who proved that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up. About choosing to fight even when fighting seemed impossible. About building something that outlasted the people who tried to destroy you. She thought about Marcus and Catherine and Vivian and everyone else who'd been part of that old world. Some had changed, some hadn't. But Elena had stopped measuring her worth by their opinions. She'd built her own empire, one that actually mattered, and she'd done it with a partner who'd seen her potential when she couldn't see it herself. Ready? Darian murmured. Elena smiled. Always. They cut the ribbon together, and the crowd erupted in applause. And somewhere in the chaos, Elena caught her reflection in a window, poised, confident, powerful. Not because someone had given her power, but because she'd taken it. She'd stopped waiting for permission to matter and started building a life that proved she always had. The woman in the ballroom, humiliated, invisible, discarded, was gone. In her place stood Elena Virelli, Duchess, Changemaker, Force of Nature, and she was just getting started. That night, back in their hotel room, Elena and Darian sat on the balcony watching the stars. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" Elena asked. "Every day? Do you regret any of it?" "Not a single moment." Darian turned to her. "Do you?" Elena thought about the pain, the fear, the moments when she'd thought she couldn't survive. She thought about the night she'd taken Darian's hand and chosen to stop being invisible. She thought about everything that had come after, the battles, the victories, the empire they'd built and rebuilt and kept building. "No," she said. "Not one." Darian pulled her close, and they sat there in the darkness. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and turned it into something extraordinary. The world kept spinning. Challenges kept coming. There would always be more fights, more corruption, more people who needed someone to believe in them. But Elena and Darian would be there, moving forward, building, fighting, proving that the people society threw away were often the ones who changed it completely. And in the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.